So it seems like I'm always making these little videos and or podcast episodes or whatever the fuck these are, while I'm not at home, while I'm traveling, while I'm doing other things, and they're never scripted. I kind of hate that I do them. Um, and yet there's something compelling about them, if for no one else but me, to try to figure out how threads of a certain story come together and how hitting every rock on the river, even in a past version of myself as I was learning to guide, continues to ripple through my life today. And some of the ways that, like when I think about the working title of Every Rock on the River, there's a playfulness in it, right? Like I jokingly always say that anyone can learn to river guide if I could learn to river guide, because the only way to get good at something is to know all the ways you can fuck it up first. And there's only so many ways you can fuck it up before you start getting it right. And then when you get it right, you know it in your bones. And so the sort of joking title of Every Rock on the River came from this idea of, yeah, you know why I know this river so well? Because I hit every rock on this fucking river. Um, and I think today I'm thinking about the resilience that that builds. And I'm also thinking about the way that that can be harmful too, and the ways that, um, yeah, like the actual literal metaphor of hitting every rock on the river was the most deep, profound way of learning how to boat on that specific river that I love so much, the present day Middle Fork of the Salmon. But then I think about all of the things that surrounded working on that river and what I sacrificed to be in space with that place long enough to have that kind of continual contact with it, and where that was very useful, and that nothing could have kept me away from that river. And also how that was really naive, and the things I endured to be in a space that's very heavily gate kept. So where I'm thinking about this today is, as I'm in North Carolina right now speaking at a public health conference tomorrow, and as I was on the airplane, I can't remember who recommended this to me. So if you were the person out there who recommended this to me, thank you. But there's a podcast called Dissect where they take um, different songs or albums from artists and go lyric by lyric, and they go by sound score and talk about the background of how the production of this song came to be and what the implications are. And it just adds a layer of understanding the artistry of what people endure and create to make art. And so I downloaded the full season that is exploring Beyonce's Lemonade. And while I was already a huge Lemonade fan to begin with, I had, and obviously there are very clear tones of slavery and history of Black America melted into the imagery. I hadn't really given much thought to Beyonce's lyrical choices and overtones and poetry overtones that connected to that history as well. And now that I am listening to this podcast, it feels like such a dumb moment. I'm very humbled as a person who, is not a person of color, to be listening to this and being like, oh yeah, the double entendres are very clear if that's your lived experience. Of course, I missed many of those things. And I have such a deeper layer of respect for this album. Much more than just like, yeah, these are bangers. I have a lot of reverence for, yeah, Beyonce's artistry of taking something that was acutely painful, which was the indiscretion of her romantic partner and the infidelity that that brought, and how it was a portal into her needing to really reckon with the intergenerational trauma within her family and the intergenerational trauma within the country that we all live, and the societal implications of all of this. And yeah, and then turning into something that is unique and specific to her and her skill set and her artistry. And I think that where I still feel I have I have stopped feeling a lot of creative impulse to want to write essay about my time guiding on the river, because it feels very played out. I feel very much like I've combed through a lot of these memories in their kind of classic historical documenting for myself type of a way, but where I feel a lot of life and energy and curiosity still is how do these developmental moments of my background inform the struggles that I still tender inform the struggles that I'm still navigating today, that I still feel like I'm hitting more rocks at. And this morning I'm thinking a lot about the concept of anger and how really, really unhinged, unhealthy forms of anger were appropriate in the space of guiding that I grew up in and in my family system and in the sort of small rural American town that I grew up in. But healthy anger was never shown. It is not dealt with, and I think has some really serious implications that creates a lot of downstream effects of anxiety for folks who are not able to have healthy expressions of anger in that space, myself included, but also people that I've interacted with. And also the ways that I too have perpetuated someone else feeling anxious because they were not able to be angry with me because I didn't have the skills to receive it either, particularly in that work setting. And yeah, so as I have been thinking about this, the one story I think that is articulating this really well that I wanted to share today is the juxtaposition of what healthy anger looks like and what healthy anger does not look like. And perhaps I talked about this. I don't know. I like these are very unscripted and just me babbling, so I don't feel like I have no recollection of anything I've said in any other episodes or recordings. But yeah, so there's a story that happened. I guess let me back up before I share the story. Part of the reason healthy anger is so hard for me to find is because I have very rarely seen it done well. And I have very rarely seen people respond to hurt and discomfort well either. So when we're trying to navigate our way down this metaphorical river and we're hitting every rock on the way down, what would make it easier perhaps is if somebody were in a boat in front of us showing us the lines and then cultivating our understanding of the lines and teaching us the lines and doing that with kindness and grace. And then when we get stuck, getting out of their boat to come help us rather than making fun of us or just ignoring us or trying to bump us off but making it worse, because they're so afraid of their own getting stuck that they can't bother to help. And so the one story that is coming to mind that really parallels this for me, that has punctuated it for me in the last year, is that I live and work at a silent retreat center occasionally. And while I am there, I'm typically in a manager role. So my role is to be showing up to all of the teacher instruction meditations. My role is to be communicating with any of the staff that are working and living on site. My role is to talk to the teacher who is teaching that specific silent meditation retreat. And my role is to also be kind of keeping an eye out for and tending to any needs of any of the yogis who are on site during silent meditation retreat. And we have people kind of wonder how we communicate during silent meditation retreat. There's a cork board where people can write down very simple kind of basic needs that need to be met and then put that on the cork board. And I'm the person when I'm in that role who's addressing those needs directly. So anyway, in this role last fall, I was working as retreat manager. It was my first time retreat managing without a lot of hand holding. And I had a staff member who's a person of color come up to me and ask if they could speak to me briefly. And I, of course, stepped away, made time, and they communicated to me that the silent meditation teacher, who's a teacher who's been coming to this particular retreat center for over 30 years. They are very well respected. They do a lot of anti-racial work. This person of color, who was our staff member, said, "Hey, I was feeling really disrespected and it felt like a racial microaggression. And I am requesting that you address this with him very directly. And I don't want you to sugarcoat it. I need you to tell him this was a racial microaggression and that I didn't appreciate it. And I listened very empathetically. I was trying not to place my own story on it. And as I was listening, I was really uncomfortable with this dynamic for many reasons, which I'll unpack here in a minute. But my first response to this person who very vulnerably was asking me to take my role as a manager seriously and tend to the needs that I'm supposed to be tending to, I said, I'm sure he didn't mean it in that way. And then I started to explain himself. And I'm super grateful this person stopped me and said, this is what I'm talking about. I need you not to sweep this under the rug. I need you to take this very seriously. I'm talking very calmly because I need you to really hear what I have to say. But this was very impactful for me. It was very hurtful. And I need you to address it with the person. And I was able to have the presence of mind to stop, apologize, hear them, figure out the full request. I stepped away. At a later time, and again, I don't know if this was appropriate or not, but it is what I did. It's how I navigated it. I circled back to this person and apologized for my initial response and owned that I was trying to take care of my own discomfort with their discomfort, but that I was in no way trying to invalidate the experience that they had. And then I was so fucking nervous to talk to this teacher because this is a teacher that I have interacted with for many years. I perceive them to be somebody who is very well-meaning. I know that they have a huge repertoire of anti-racial work. And I started spiraling about how I thought this conversation was going to go. So in our daily meeting, I didn't let that spiraling stop me. I noticed that I was spiraling and said, okay, this is my job. This is literally what I'm here to do. Like, I have to do this anyway. And I want to try to do it as gracefully as I can. So I had the conversation with him and I said, hey, we sort of caught up about the logistical needs for the retreat. And I said, hey, I have a concern I really need to bring to your attention. And I'm really uncomfortable with what I'm about to say. And I'm really nervous about having this conversation. So I just want to front load it with that. And then I just very blatantly said, we have a staff member who had an interaction with you yesterday that felt like a pretty egregious racial microaggression, and it impacted them deeply, and they're very hurt by it. And I braced myself for this person to tell me that the other person was wrong. I braced myself for being told I was wrong. I braced myself for being told I was too sensitive or that I was protecting someone too much, or I was bracing myself for all the logistical reasons of why this person maybe would have said something unthinkingly and that they didn't really mean it. And, I was fully braced to have this difficult and unsatisfactory interaction. And instead, this 75-year-old white cis het man looks at me and says, I had no idea. I am so sorry. I'm really thinking deeply about what I'm hearing from you, and I will do my best to change this behavior in the future. I'm also curious if it's appropriate for me to apologize directly to this staff member, or if this is something that is just simply repaired by me continuing to show up in the space better next time. And then we had a good dialogue about it. And then I was able to sort of report that dialogue back to the staff member who had felt aggressed against. And while they were still hurt, they felt satisfied with how, as satisfied as they could be about how this went down. And the rest of the retreat was really pleasant, and people were able to respect each other and share space and have conversation after silence had been broken. In a way that was nurturing and connective for people. However, immediately after this conversation, I went to my staff housing and I cried for about an hour and a half. I was like really, really, really upset by this. And I was having a little bit of, like what I perceived to be like a trauma release or a trauma response from this interaction, not because of the interaction itself, but because of recognizing all of the times that I have either tried to have conversations with some of the outfitters that I grew up with, or have witnessed other people trying to have skillful conversations with some of the community members that we grew up with. and have it go really wrong, and not just like a little bit wrong, not like dismissing someone, like yelling matches or people losing their jobs or um, being fully ostracized in a community or having a lot of rumors be spread about what did or did not go on. Um, and I think that it was a lot for me to process all the times that I've been on all sides of this situation. I've been somebody who did not receive the feedback well. I have been the person who was trying really hard to get my needs met. I was sometimes the person trying to stand up for someone else during this process. Sometimes I was the person who was silently watching someone else get accosted. But when I think about growing up in a community that doesn't know how to navigate complex and difficult situations like this, I think my before this interaction that I had in this manager role, I would have told you I think it's a great ideal, but I don't think that it exists. I don't think that we can get there. I don't think there are tools we can learn how to do this. And so I think what really let the emotionality come out is that I actually witnessed this happening, and I witnessed it happening in a way that was kind and not easeful entirely, but it stayed within it was right-sized, it didn't bleed out into the entire retreat, it didn't ruin anyone's whole day. It was confined to an aggression happened, someone said that it hurt them, someone asked for help, that help was given, and then that feedback was given, and then the situation more or less resolved itself. And I don't wanna minimize, I don't wanna say that the person who was aggressed against doesn't have a ton of microaggressions that they're not working through, and this doesn't pile on to that thing. But my impression is that this caused less harm than it could have if it had gone a different direction. And so I guess today, as I'm thinking about a lot of these things, like as I'm continuing to listen to Beyonce's Lemonade again, as I am entering into new career spaces, as I'm holding new relationships, I am really, really holding this question of what does it mean to have healthy anger? What does it mean to be able to express anger in a healthy way? What does it mean to be able to be on the receiving end of anger in a healthy way? How do we keep something right sized and repair it? How do we navigate our own internal compass when something is feeling wildly difficult? Um, and how do we bring these skills and tools into a community that has a very, very, very ingrained roadmap for how to do this in a way that's harmful? How do we start to make these little tiny changes along the way? So, those are my questions. That's what I'm thinking about today. And I don't have any answers. So, if anyone actually ends up watching this and is thinking about this deeply and pondering it, let me know.